Hello and welcome to this episode of In the Bunch, the world's fastest moving cycling magazine show, and that's by a darn long way. In fact, seasonally, we're at the end of the European Spring Classic season now, but what a year it's been for the beleaguered cycling South Africa. No president, but brilliant results from its riders, that is. Daryl Impey was world number one for a while. He's still in the world top 10. Of course, 2 medals at the Commonwealth Games. Ashleigh Moolman-Pasio, fourth and a second in Flèche Wallonne. That's in the European Spring Classics leading up to that. But she's been absolutely amazing. We chatted to her soon after this fantastic result.
It's really been a race that I've loved from the very beginning when I started cycling in Europe. And it's also been a race that I've performed really well in ever since I first came over. So other than the very first time I did it in 2011, where I crashed or was involved in a crash with other riders on the descent just before the final, I've finished in the top 5, and last year 6th in every other edition that I finished. So, I think it's safe to say that it's a race that suits me, and therefore a race that I really love. It's just so special finishing up the Liege-Bastogne-Liege, which is an incredibly tough climb. It's super steep, and it's always lined with crowds. So the crowds really give you great energy and motivation. You're suffering and you're just waiting for the finish line to come, but with all the screaming of the crowd, somehow it drowns out that pain and it gives you the motivation to keep going. And as we got to the top of the Côte de Giraffe and down the descent, we could see the breakaway just ahead. They were literally like 15 seconds ahead. It was also important not to bring this breakaway back too early, because if we did it, again, we would be on the back foot as a team. We'd be outnumbered and riders would start attacking and counter-attacking. So in the end, it was timed absolutely perfectly. As we entered into the mead, the breakaway was just ahead, and that's when I surged to start to bring them back. And I felt really good up the mead for the last time, and brought the breakaway back, and then I'd watched videos of previous races and even of the men, because we all know that Valverde is a specialist on the Liege-Bastogne-Liege. So I had earmarked the point where I would like to attack, and it was probably about 250 meters, where it still is a little bit steep just before it flattens out. But I think bulls, were nervous of that, and they probably knew that was what I wanted to do, and I'd already made it quite hard from the beginning of the meet. So I found myself boxed in. They managed to position themselves literally with 2 riders, Anna and Megan, one ahead and one on the side of me, and sort of holding me into the barriers. And I have to admit that was a very frustrating experience, because I knew it was the moment where I wanted to go, and at that very moment, I had no way out. So unfortunately, they took it back into their favor, and as it flattened out again, that was the first moment where I had a gap to force my way through, and unfortunately that meant it was back into Anna van der Breggen's favor.
Indeed, the eyebrows might have been raised when our Glasgow bronze medalist at the Commonwealth Games, Ashleigh, decided not to take part in the equivalent at the Gold Coast at the same time of the season's European spring season. What a good call it was, though, because she certainly got second in Flèche Wallonne, got 4th in the Ronde van Vlaanderen, and also 4th in Liege-Bastogne-Liege. Good call by her, and a brilliant spring season it was.
Yeah, I'm very satisfied. It's been a strong and consistent spring campaign. It's the best spring campaign I've had so far. It's resulted in a 3rd world ranking. So due to my consistency in the spring, I'm ranked 3rd in the world. So I might not have won any race or podiumed in all, but because of my consistency, I'm grateful to have my best ever world ranking, and I think the best South Africa has ever seen with world female. I touched on a 3rd ranking last year, but it didn't last very long. So hopefully this is going to last longer, and hopefully I can keep the consistency and for world number 1. That is a goal for me. And having come from last year, which was a very difficult year, coming back from a serious injury, it just shows how much that interrupted my development as a rider. And so I suppose sometimes, there is value in having to suffer the obstacles because it makes you stronger, and I think that's very obvious.
You might remember the name Candice Neethling, who as a young junior girl got a medal at world level in the mountain bike discipline. She's been brilliant as a mountain biker, cross country and roadie in South Africa, professional, mid-20s now, leaving South Africa for the time being to seek her fame and fortune in Europe in any of those disciplines. Let's find out from her where, why and how. What can we expect?
So I want to do some of the cross-country races overseas in Europe, but not necessarily the World Cup. So I'd like to do some of the German series, the Swiss series, the French series, and just build up my confidence with the racing and get to know it better, and who's strong where, and kind of the courses and the kind of things that you've got to ride. Yeah, and also I do have an opportunity I'm kind of looking at opportunities to race on the road. Also, again, looking at places to kind of base myself for a period of time, and then go to a few races from there. So at the moment, again, I have a few options, but it's best to say, get your visa and then go over there to Europe.
Well, will it be tailwinds and downhills for Candice Lill as she leaves South Africa in search of the big league? Remember interviewing Pat McQuaid a couple of years ago in Aigle at the UCI headquarters when he was then the president of the UCI, and I said, Mr. McQuaid, the Aussies seem to do it big internationally. Why don't us South Africans do it? And he was absolutely frank. He said, you guys have travelitis. You want your mothers. Is that true or isn't it? Let's find out from Ashleigh what it takes to really succeed at world level.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely not easy, and I wish I could sit here and lay out some really simple steps and say, it's do this, do that, do this, and you'll make it. But unfortunately, it's not that simple, and there are quite a few obstacles you have to overcome as a rider coming from the Southern Hemisphere or another continent. As such, of course, professional cycling favors Europeans, and there's no question about that. Most of the important races happen in Europe, and it obviously is that much easier for those that are born, bred, and have their support base and family in Europe. It's much easier for them. So for us as South Africans, Australians, Americans, I mean, the challenges are pretty much the same, and that's often around visas and the amount of time we're allowed to spend in Europe. I actually only got that passport in 2016, but I managed to be in Europe for a few seasons since, pretty much full-time since 2011. So there's always a way, and the situation is improving now. Sorry, there's a vacuum cleaner. Should I stop that quickly? Can you hear it? Shit, and now I messed up the interview. As the way women's cycling is progressing now, hopefully that's going to become less and less of a problem. When I first came over to Europe, I came over as a South African full-time professional, or I suppose amateur professional. We can't even really call ourselves full-time professional if we're just in South Africa. And I literally had to make a plan to make it work because I wasn't being paid by a European team. But as I said, things are starting to improve in women's cycling, where salaries are becoming better, and obviously then the contracts are more formal and concrete, which obviously should help in terms of visas, to be able to get a working visa. But of course, as a female cyclist, it will require a leap of faith in the beginning, and it means just coming over here and trying your best to maximize on the 3 months that are available to you to make a good impression, and then to go back to South Africa for a period of time and to come over again. So you have to be a little bit smart about how you use your Schengen visa, and it takes a special kind of desire or motivation to be able to make it happen, because there are times where it can be scary, but it can also be quite thrilling. As long as you come with an open mind and a willingness to adapt, then the world is your oyster.
What a fantastic campaign, Ashleigh Moolman-Pasio. Thank you from South Africa for that one. A wonderful spring season. The men's version, though, two absolutely striking moments in our opinion. First was the frenzy started off at Milano-San Remo, that spring classic, which saw the race up the Poggio again, the deciding moment coming out of that one. Vincenzo Nibali, the Italian, went away. They enjoyed a maximal lead of 11 seconds with 5 kilometers to go at the end. 1 second. That's what he had, but it was enough to win this one. The world's biggest bike race, Paris-Roubaix, with its Hell of the North component right at the end, saw the world champion Peter Sagan make one telling move. It was as if he had a red button, which he pressed, which he didn't have, to propel him to the front of the race and race him to victory in Roubaix. Jay Thompson, South African rider, was in the telling break of the entire day there. But what transpired later, he suffered a mechanical which reduced him to the inner ring only. How would you like to do 60 or 70 kilometers an hour in the telling break on the inner ring? Not surprising, Jay ran out of revs at some point in this big race.
You know, being in the break, I was pretty happy and felt pretty good. And then, a mishap happened to me where I couldn't use my big chainring anymore on a flat race. It's not the most ideal situation to be in, but you know, that's Paris-Roubaix. The queen of the classics gives you everything. She throws what she feels like out there. So yeah, you have to take what she gives and and just deal with it. And yeah, it's a little bit disappointing to not be able to see how far I would have been able to go with the breakaway. Obviously, knowing Sylvain Dillier quite well, training with him a lot, and knowing how strong he is, I definitely know I wouldn't have made it to Roubaix with him and Sagan, but it would have been interesting to see how far I could have gone. At the end of the day, it was a good day, but also another way super disappointing because we never got what we wanted out of the race, and we could have got so much more if things had gone our way. But if you speak to 100 out of the 190 guys that start that race, they probably tell you the same thing. They were disappointed and they could have got more out of it if they didn't crash or didn't puncture or weren't caught behind a crash or weren't caught somewhere. So Roubaix is one of those races where luck has a lot to do with it, but at the end of the day, the strongest guy always wins.
South Africa's success story of 2018 continued at the recent Commonwealth Games. 2 bronze medals in the discipline of cycling. Clint Hendricks found himself in different water to what he was used to, quite literally speaking, of course, in this tester.
It was a weird race. It was like a European type of classic, where typical classic, you can't really let anything go up the road, and that's basically what happened. It took a long time for the break to get established, and no one really wanted to miss out. So it was difficult just to sit in and save energy because there was some splits happening in the group and big names going up the roads. I was forced to follow the racing, and that's what I did. I had to follow the racing until it settled down.
And that fantastic lunge of Clint's right at the end of that Commonwealth Games sprint certainly got him the bronze. If he'd not done that, it would have been 4th on this occasion. Another South African to excel at the Commonwealth Games, Alan Hatherley in the mountain bike discipline, this time where he rode a bronze medal performance. Great ride from him, the youngster who was second at the World Under-23 Champs just the year before, this time on the podium in this very sought-after race.
Yeah, obviously so stoked with the outcome. Obviously you always aim for as high up on the podium as you can get, but considering 8 weeks ago I broke my left radius and fractured my right wrist, to come back to a race of this level and medal is huge. And Sam won the first World Cup of the season against Nina Schutz, the Olympic champion, and Anton I think was like 5th, so we literally, I was racing against the best in the world, and to come away 3rd, 20 seconds back is a really good race considering it's the first big one back.
Well, Alan was hardly back in South Africa, maybe just for a quick shower, and then all the way up to the top of the continent to Egypt for the African mountain bike champs, which he won the gold medal at, beating on this occasion teammate Stiehl into the second wheel. And as we get into the meat now of this episode of In the Bunch, we start getting closer to the hot spot. In fact, the hot spot's all about the Great Escape. Well, in fact, if you're about my age or thereabouts, you will know all about the Great Escape. Great Escapes come in many formats, but the one I remember, Steve McQueen, that legendary 60s movie where he drove or rode that motocross bike, scaled the fence to eventual freedom, a fantastic experience. In fact, you can have one probably as good, if not better, going to the Great Escape mountain bike race happening on the 15th to the 17th of June in the Great Greyton area, which is in the Riviersonderend mountain basin. In fact, where all of the mountain bike trails in the world seem to start or finish one way or the other. This race is really great with lots of hospitality, set in the heart of Greyton, which, as you know, if you've not been there, is a main street of only restaurants, stayeries and fantasticaries, whichever you prefer on this occasion. It's going to be a weekend not to be missed. Please look for more details in the link below or go directly to the events website and enter now. But this is one you should not dare to miss. The 15th to the 17th of June in Greyton, the Great Escape. South African cycling pundits, some of them will tell you that cycling in this country is no longer a sport and that it's in fact become a pastime. Why a pastime? Because the distances, the races are attainable and achievable by almost everybody. True. However, the Amashova event has made a very bold move. They've now offered a 160-kilometer sector as part of the Amashova celebrations, which now run into 32 years of the old Pietermaritzburg to Durban route. South African pro cyclists on the road, in fact, think it's the finish at the first feeding station of the international events. Now this could put them back on the map. Let's hear if Miles van Musschenbroek, South African pro touch rider, agrees with that statement or otherwise.
The races are very hard. I'm not going to deny that, but they do really suit a certain type of rider. And long term for the development of the sports, I don't think that's good. Something needs to change. I think for us as South African cyclists, and especially for the younger guys trying to bridge the gap to Europe, it's definitely important for us to have these longer races, so that when the youngsters do get to Europe, I'd say the sort of gap is not as big to jump in terms of race distance and the quality of the riding. So, I mean, the route's hard. It's very good for cycling in South Africa, and it's big ups to the sponsors for realizing this and making it happen.
The third week in November sees the Double Century event take place in the Western Cape, a 200-kilometer, 12-rider team time trial, which has had many, many successful renditions. In fact, that very same recipe has been taken by the organizers now to the Eastern Free State for their Double 90 event, run on exactly the same basis. This year they saw the Brazani team up with the Luso riders to make one massive team and, of course, unbeatable on the day. Calvin Biernecker was one of the riders in that squad who came up tops at the leaderboards at the end of the trip.
Our game plan and that was to go out as fast as possible, set the fastest time as quick as possible. So we managed to do that just by good communication, everybody doing their fair share of equal workload, and just by going faster.
And now doubling the distance of the Double 90, but this time going on the mountain bike in the 361, a mountain bike challenge in the Southern Cape. Die Hollandse knaapie daarso was dit Ramses Bekink, wat die algehele wennaar was van hierdie prachtkoers, met in die tweede plaas die Suid-Afrikaner Benkenstein, met wie ons geklap het, net na die koers.
It's definitely the hardest single day event that I've done in my life, anything. I've never done anything harder that only lasts less than 24 hours. Obviously, once you get to events that take multi-days, they become hard in a different way. But compared to any road, mountain, any single day of riding in my life, that was the most exhausted and the hardest single day event that I've done.
Sticking on the mountain bike, but an encounter of a different kind. The recent Winans encounter saw teammates Arno de Tooy and his once rival Gert Heinz team up this time to top the headerboard after 3 days of very interesting mountain biking.
It was a good 3 days of racing and a good opportunity to test the legs and the current form against some good competition out there. I raced with Arno de Tooy. We've done a few stage races in the past, but yeah, we're planning on doing the Sonic to Sea next month. So this was a good opportunity for us to just ride together again and compare our form to the other top guys, and yeah, also to see how we can work together. And yeah, we rode together very nicely.
The Joburg to Sea mountain bike race, 9 days of it, sold the mixed section as a world championship in the build-up to this year's event. A world championship. Well, you can imagine what the UCI, the world controlling body, thought of allowing the world champions jersey to the mixed doubles winners at this event. Organizer Craig Wapnick got a very nasty letter back from them. This is in fact his response to that.
You know, when I was 25 years old, I might have got sort of my, uppity and sort of done something to say, well, how can you own this and that? But actually, that's what they do. They own the world champs, and they do a good job of it in general. I just feel, and I even sent a letter back to them saying, why don't you do anything with mixed cycling, like as in mixed doubles tennis and stuff? What's the reason for not giving points? And it was, I haven't got a reply from them for that.
Well, we also asked Craig then, once he'd read the letter from the UCI, what the emphasis was, what they were pursuing with this mixed doubles men's women's team thing. What's it all about?
So we've seen the trend of our event over 9 years. We put the prize money equal to over 1 year for women, and we've got less women's teams that year than the year before that. We just don't seem to attract women racing teams. We've got lots of women riding, about 100 riders or so. A lot of them are attracted to the mixed. I'm not 100% sure why the racing proposers are attracted to the mixed, but we just see the trend in our event. So we've kind of moved with the times.
And so on to the podium protocol ceremony. What's hot, what's not in the bunch. In third wheel, in the bronze medal position, Peter Sagan, that amazing victory in Paris-Roubaix. Second wheel, Candice Lill leaves South Africa's shores in search of bigger things. Right atop the podium, quite deservedly, 2 medals from the Commonwealth Games. Please do let us know whether you've liked it or otherwise. That is in the bunch, of course, in our comments section. Please do not hesitate to subscribe to the show if you've enjoyed it as much as what we've done doing it for you, and do tap the bell. Now it's Johnny Kun on behalf of Kutsia Gous and the team saying ciao for now. But before I leave, I'd like to be the next World Mixed Doubles Champion. When the next World Championship comes around in that discipline, all I do require is a willing partner. But until then, it's probably better to go training to forget about those dreams.